Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Port Talk. I am honored to have Kathleen Black here with us today, a coach, a mentor, a keynote speaker, and now someone that is even sharing her personal story on a film. So Kathleen, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to kind of dive into you, your backstory, and kind of what you're doing to set yourself apart in your current your space now.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, for those that don't know or don't follow you on any of your social channels, can you give me like a quick synopsis of kind of your background along with your real estate journey? Obviously, this is a big real estate podcast. So, just kind of give me a
Sure.
little backstory for anyone that doesn't know really who you are.
Yeah, I'll give you the Coles notes. Keep it simple. But I mean, I got into real estate based on investment properties. I was buying investment properties, and myself and my ex-husband, we were buying them, gutting them, making them like multi-unit. So a lot of sweat equity. And eventually
Mhm.
there was just this push to get my real estate license. And I always say it's funny to say to a community of realtors, which will be watching this, that I did not want to get my real estate license. I had two kids under 5. I was managing our properties and doing like everything you can imagine. And I was busy enough. But finally, there was enough pressure because my husband really felt I was micromanaging our realtor because he couldn't assess cash flow effectively the way we could for investment. And it just became frustrating. So he said, why don't you just get it? So initially, I thought I would get my license to help build our portfolio, but I ended up to get my license, real estate, and building investment properties with literally, they called us like the no money miracle at the time, was a lot of pressure on our marriage. So
So,
I got licensed.
what time frame was this? Like, what year roughly?
This was like building around 2005, 6, 7. So like leading up to where you guys had the crash. So we had some of that like 100% money going on. We had
Yeah.
interesting mix,
And
like
you are
things were
based out of
different.
Canada. Sorry. So, Kathleen's
Yeah,
based out of
we're
Canada.
based
Yep.
out of Canada. So we didn't have the same, we didn't have as potent as an effect of the market change as you
Interesting.
guys did in the States, for sure, in 2008, 2009. But essentially got my license, caused a lot of stress on my marriage. So I had this brand new real estate license and I had to kind of pick, what are you going to do? Like lean in or go back to something a little more secure. And I leaned into real estate during a really messy divorce, two kids under 5. And I
Wow.
just wanted to be able to be self-sustainable, to be honest. Like anybody who's been through divorce, it's messy, it's expensive. We all know it's not fun. Anyone who's been through it, right? But I leaned in hard into real estate. So I sold 44 homes in my first year. And out
Nice.
of second year, I'd already started to work with what was the first team specific coaching company for real estate in Canada. And within a couple of years, I was running that company. I became a 50% owner. I had a silent partner. So I've been actually coaching team expansion in the top 1% for 15 years now, almost,
Jeez.
which is crazy. But yeah, it just shows life can take us on interesting adventures, and real estate's been very hard on me, but very good to me, I have to say.
What's interesting too, because I feel like buying your own real estate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I do the same. I buy, invest. My wife and I do the same. But it's amazing when you're spending your own money, how much more detail. Like you talked about, there was so much level
Yeah.
of detail or just awareness that the agent wasn't giving you in your
Mhm.
husband at the time. So it's like when you're buying and selling your own product, you're watching every penny and you're learning the business kind of the dirty way, right? So I feel like that was probably a very paramount moment for you, or the accelerant, I guess, maybe in your real estate business, buying and
I
selling, getting into it, getting dirty first.
Yeah, I think it helped also because I mean, I came into the industry only understanding real estate as an investment. Like even our personal home, I always knew like if we had to liquidate, right? Like everything's being
Worst
managed
case
based on rent.
scenarios. Yeah.
Yeah, worst case scenario. So as an agent, I wasn't shy to like, hey, like I'm looking at everything, right? The panel and the furnace and the windows because I know this deal. So I think right away I had a lot of clients being like, wait, like you're telling us something that's not good about the property. I'm like, well, yeah, I work for you. Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? So I didn't really know any different coming into the industry. And I think, proof in point that being educational and supporting people is really the superior model. I believe, consultants approach. And I think because I came from investment, it was all I knew when I got into real estate.
So what was the big shift then? So you started out buying, investing, and then you obviously shifted that into becoming a licensed real estate agent. And then quickly you made that shift to coaching. Was there something,
Yeah.
what gravitated you so quickly after just a year or so into coaching? Was it just you figured it out really quick and wanted to share. What was that driving factor for you to kind of roll into that managerial coach role?
Well, I think it was a couple of things. Honestly, I think, I've always been fascinated by what makes people tick. I've had a hard background. I've always believed in recreating yourself and growth. And I come from chaos, right? So when you know how to get out of chaos, you really thrive well under stress, right? Which
Yeah.
is not a good thing. Over time, it can lead to burnout and other things. But because I understand, how to create a vision during hard times and create something new in the world, that's a huge asset in coaching as well. I mean, I worked with a team. I was going through, as I said, a really messy, difficult divorce, which led to, like, I was probably honestly angry and I was scared and all those huge motivators, right? To really be self-sustaining. So, I mean, for me to sell the amount I did, like, we're part of Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, which is the biggest board in the world. And it still made me top 1% in that
Wow.
first year, which was pretty cool. But I think very quickly I valued efficiency, and I had to. I was a single mom, like I didn't have time to hang out. So for me, those skills were really transferable to want to help people and be like, hey, like, what if we did it this way? Or, hey, look at the stats when we put it in this process. And that to me is just like fascinating.
It's awesome. I love that. Well, that kind of rolls me into a little bit because I think you just had some really cool success recently. You just hosted the Kathleen Black Summit, and the big focus that you had there was talking about the shift movement.
Mhm.
And so with that, I guess, what's the motivation behind that? Can you explain maybe a
Yeah.
little bit to our listeners what the shift movement really for you is?
Yeah, so a couple things. Like, we rebranded our summit, so it's been 15 years of conferences every year, and
Wow.
those who run them understand that it's like a massive wedding every year, right, with your whole community. So it's great. But this year we rebranded it because the keynote that I'm touring, that we've done in like Miami and Las Vegas, and now it's coming to like a major platform. I'll be keynoting, and Magic Johnson's keynoting at the same event. It's super cool. So the
Awesome.
shift movement, yeah, it's exciting, right? And the shift movement for us is about shifting people out of where they get stuck, that fear, that negative side of ego, where we get frozen and we start to get competitive instead of collaborative, and we start to think we have to know all the answers, and instead of saying, hey, I need help here, we try to pretend that we know it all, right? And it's shifting into the space. I like to akin it to, when you're like, you go on the cab to the airport, and then you take the long flight, and then you take the shuttle to where you're going, and you finally get to the room and you put down the bags. You're like, oh, like, I finally have a bit of relief.
Yeah.
That's that shift into a place where we actually can leverage in a way that's efficient, productive, and profitable. So it's not just a business shift, it's also a leadership shift into a place of healthy, calm leadership instead of overbearing or absentee leadership, even as a parent or a friend or a real estate team leader or a brokerage leader. So it's a movement I really believe in, and I've seen the power of it in the teams that we support.
Well, I think the timing of what you're doing and your keynotes right now are so important because, my team of agents, my company here, and I think throughout the country, there's a shift. There's a shift in the overall market right now. What's happening when the interest rates went to 8% in our market across the United States, that shifted that buyer demand in a different planet. They just kind of went back, they got cold. And so there's so many agents out there trying to do that, to shift, right? So I think it is important what you just said. There's different levels of shifting, right? Because I think there's so many people that want to shift like that and say, oh my God, I don't have any buyer demand. I don't have any sellers. What do I do? I have to shift and I have to do everything. It's like, maybe you don't. Maybe just take a pause a little bit. And I think that's the focus we're trying to talk to our agents is like, or just stick to the basics and go back to some of the things you just were referencing.
Yeah, and I find, a lot, like, we've had a lot of new teams come into our community recently for all sorts of reasons, right? In the economy, and like you said, buyers hesitating, all these things. But we're really noticing, it's hard to go back to the basics if we don't have them documented or tried, tested, and true. If we don't have the data, it's like, oh shoot, now we realize we really weren't as structured as we thought. And that can be heavy, right? It can be really
Yeah.
hard. So I think there's a lot of businesses going back and going like, wait, what are our basics, right? How do we streamline this to help people, which is important because you're going out there with buyers and sellers right now. The higher energy wins. So if you're frozen, if you're fearful, if you're apprehensive, you don't see the opportunities, Mike, like, good luck,
Yeah. Yep.
going out and trying to influence buyers and sellers. Like, that's just impossible.
So I love that you just said basics because all the stuff I was looking in, watching your videos, going back to your beginning, obviously a lot of guys dig into what Kathleen, your backstory, it's fascinating. And just you really, you share a lot, which I think is important for people to get to know you, to understand where you came from and how you got to where you're at. But the one thing that I saw a lot was this word relentlessly. There's so much about relentless that you have instilled in you that just keeps you going and going. Can you dig into that a little bit of what kind of gave you that drive? Because talking about the basics, I feel like that's such an awesome word, just to be relentless through these shifts. And it's amazing
Yeah.
when you that's why you do it for a living. When you talk about shifts and you put those words together, they are powerful words. So what kind of gave
Yeah,
you
for
that
sure.
relentless to just to keep going through everything?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I was just wired that way. It's funny, like people when I was young were like, you were always like this. You were always trying to create something better.
Yeah.
But of course, I don't see it that way. We don't see it. The Relentless came out from the documentary. So the director noticed that people kept saying it again and
So they
again when
were
he was
saying it about
interviewing
you.
interviewing them, and I didn't love the name initially. I wrote my book saying "Relentless to Rise," not "Relentless about me." "Relentless to Rise" was my
Okay.
memoir because I wanted to help people relentlessly rise out of difficult situations. And I meet so many people when I share my personal story who are like, Kathleen, like and they'll come up on the side, right? And they're like, I got to tell you, like we've gone through these things, like we've had abuse, we've had trauma, we've had difficulty, and it's still holding us back. And then we hear your story and we're like, wow, you used it to get ahead, not over people, like empower yourself. And that's really important to me. So I think Relentless to Rise was that, we can take the fuel of difficulty or conflict or a difficult economic environment, and we can fuel that to say, no, like I'm able to find opportunities in any single situation if I commit myself to relentlessly look for them. And that's an archetype I call a raft builder in our community. So we talk about bobbers and sinkers and raft builders. And raft builders are amongst the most relentless of leaders of all time because they understand the most important thing for drivers and entrepreneurs and leaders to know. And that's that we're never waiting around for the future. Like some things are out of our control, of course, but the drivers are so important because they're envisioning the future. They truly care to build it better. And those people aren't everyone's archetype, but some people, I'm going to change that. All people can dive into that behavior. That behavior is available to everyone. And that's a really powerful thing.
I love the term you just said, sinkers, because I think so many people, no matter what, if it's real estate or any walks of life, all have sinkers, right? There's always something that either negatively impacts someone's life. No one ever came out of the womb and is just, everything works out perfect. There are some challenges that everyone always faces, and it's finding that thing right for you, whether it's something you just mentioned, abuse, or something that maybe is this or that. It doesn't have to be so severe. It could be just something
No.
small that is anchoring and bringing you down, that you could flip that script and turn it into, like you just said, a raft. I love those analogies, and raft you to the top of the water. But becoming
Mhm.
that, instead of a sinker, use it as an anchor to twist your life around. And I've got moments in my life that I kind of did the same. And it's just, you make those decisions, and it's either you're going to take that to the bottom of the lake, or you're going to figure out a raft and turn it into something special. And I think that's a really cool thing, is trying through your speeches is for people, like, think about that while you're listening to this, guys. When you're thinking this, is there something in your life that is the sinker that's just
Mhm.
holding you down? My kids are into fishing right now, so now I love it because it's all like anchors and fishing and all this stuff. But it
Yeah.
is so true. Everyone has something. So how do you turn that negative into a positive? And I think that's the cool thing. I think you're showing people that no matter if it's real estate or any business, take that
Mhm.
negative and flip it, turn it into your
Yeah.
raft.
Let it
It's
fuel
so
you.
cool.
Absolutely. I mean,
Cool.
imagine
So
applying that to the basics, like you said, right? To
yeah,
being like, I'm just going to model. We have a saying, model the best, forget the rest. And it's literally that. Like, if I'm going to do something, I want to look at what's data driven to be the best and just master it, master it, master it. And we hear people say this, but it's available to everybody. I mean, I'm in the coaching industry 15 years. Like, the percentage of people actually do it, I wish was much, much higher. But the ones
yeah,
who do it, they get the rewards. Like, it's just true most of the time. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that was kind of leading me into what we kind of just spurted into. But in today's market, when you talk about a shift and the shift in the world, shift in the economy, shift in the buyer demand, do you think there's a mindset shift that most leaders need to make right now to grow or be better?
Well, I think there always is, right? Like,
Yeah.
I hope that as a leader, I always have something I can identify to make myself better. And I say it that way because we have to lead ourselves first, right? Like I always say, it's people want to invest so much in how to manage other people and lead other people, but it always starts with ourselves. We focus on an inside out method. So it's saying, hey, like the interest rates can do what they want, or I can have a client who's upset that day. Like I can have a road rage with somebody in the morning, not myself. You know what I mean? That
Yep.
inside out is like I'm setting that vision and energy. And that's something that's contagious to the people around me. So as leaders, I mean, every single day we have a choice. Do we show up as a raft builder? Do we find that vision and actually choose to commit to it, regardless of how dark or damper it might be around us that day? Like every day we shift higher. In my world in the last couple of years, I mean, I'm a strong believer in collaborative environments. I truly believe teams are the present, but synergized teams are the future, probably much more than we even take into consideration. I think there's still this mentality that some teams are, top down driven, right? Their employee mentality. And that's going to be quickly wiped out, particularly in this market, by the high performance teams that are collective and collaborative. And that means they're
Yep.
all high functioning. They're all sitting in their mode of genius and they're working together towards a common goal versus like, I need to tell you from the outside to motivate you or give you a carrot. And we still see that a lot, particularly sometimes with the big, like high volume teams, which, are going to take, some of them are going to take a bit more of a hit, right? Like if your units go from 10 to 5 and the more agents you have, the lower average transactions per agent, that's hard because you're recruiting, right? And the high performance people are like, oh, shoot, if I lose one agent who went from 50 to 40, that's still a big hit. It's just a different hit. So we're really focused on, how do we be in that high performance space where leaders make money and they provide higher net incomes and leverage to the people on their team. So it's a collective win. That's what I'm in it for. I've been an agent on a team. I've been a single mom. I know what that feels like, and we really want all people to rise with the environment. So I think leadership's being challenged with that because people are looking for those environments.
And I love the synergy part because I was thinking about that today. We had a company, we would do a company call every day with all the agents at 10 a.m. We have the Zoom today. Coming off a holiday break, you're tired, all the family was in town. It's all about that energy level of a leader, right? You could come in and just be groggy. You could be tired. We're both, you and I were laughing before the call, drinking our green tea, right? You're figuring out ways because there was a book I read a long time ago. It's called The Secret. I don't know if you ever read it.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite
Yeah.
books ever. And it's all about like working with the universe. And I feel like as a leader, what you're talking about, that synergy, right? So if a leader walks into a room with negative energy, that's what they're going to be attracting, right? So if a leader has that mind shift change of having that positive vibe when they walk into it, that's the stuff that they're going to be attracting. It's a big
Mm-hmm.
magnet out there. And I love that part that, like, I think for a leader, for what you're saying is make sure that synergy is on point every day, because you do have that choice, like you said, to come in and just kind of be frumpy walking around and being negative, or you could just walk in at a high level, be positive.
Yeah. And do your work, right? Like as
Yeah.
leaders, we have a bigger, higher responsibility because I don't know the original quote of this, but I have over 20 certifications, not because I want to say that, because I want to help people, right? Power people up. And that requires a lot of tools for me and anyone else. But, we all have stuff. And I think it's so important to understand how our brains function, as leaders, truly, like if we don't have that compelling vision, if we're not doing our personal development just as relentlessly as our business development, we're literally looking at mirrors of the past and making decisions that recreate the same issues again and again. It's how our brains work. They get triggered literally. Whereas when you have this compelling vision of the future and you actually consciously say, I'm going to make different decisions to create different outcomes, now you have windows, right, of opportunities. But if we're not cleaning up, we're all working with stuff from the past. That some of it's good, some of it's not good. And I think the best leaders really understand that responsibility to their community.
So I love that you kind of were hesitant, but I love that you just said that you have all those certifications, right? I think it's okay to you're not bragging about it, but you're showing how much passion and how much sincerity you have into changing people's lives, right? You are committed to be such a professional in your space. So I guess the question that made me think of that is then, in our industry, in the real estate industry, is there something as a whole that they, as real estate agents across the board, not just specifically on the leaders, that we can all do better at changing? Is there something that they can all do as better? Because we always talk about continuing ed. I honestly think in our business, there's not enough continuing ed. So is there something that you think that they all can do? Every agent listening out there, is there something that they can all change today in their space?
Well, okay, let's give it like a straightforward, tangible one. Okay, like communication is a really great one. There's always four levels of communication. So one is just saying nothing and making changes. The second is stating the change. The third is stating the change and asking for feedback. But the fourth, the optimal, is stating the change you think is best, asking for feedback, and sharing your why behind it. And as leaders, if we can remember to get to that stage 4, like we're like 90% better communicators, and people are going to hear us more and they're going to take things in more. One of the biggest replies when teams do surveys out for, an annual or biannual survey that team members come back with again and again and again, our top complaint is that they don't feel heard. They don't feel that they're asked for ideas. They don't feel that they get to implement, right? So communication is so big. And
are you saying for the sorry to cut you, are you saying the leaders to send the survey out, or the agents to send it out to their clients? I'm at send it out to all my
the
clients.
team leader sending it to the team members.
Got it.
Yeah, like the actual people on the team. The number one complaint we hear from team members is that, like, we don't feel part of the process. We don't feel that we can give ideas. We don't feel heard. We
Don't be
feel
that
we
top down
understand.
leader, like you just said. Don't be the top down.
Yeah. But I think about it, like when I go into a meeting, I have to communicate something, like particularly in this market where I know I'm watching my financials, I'm being tight, I'm making change, I'm being careful because we have to. People are banking their incomes on us, right? So we have to do that. But it's also really easy as a driver to come in and be like, we're doing this and we're doing this. And I'm guilty of it sometimes. And so I'm like, okay, wait. You're going to talk about what you want to do, get feedback, explain your reasoning, and then go back and explain what you're going to do, or like an outcome. If we can just consciously make sure we get to that fourth step, it's like a night and day receptiveness from our team.
Love that for a leader, right? Internal, that's great. Could not an agent who's maybe not part of a team right now, could they not use that same approach to
absolutely
say if they
clients.
you sold 44 homes that one year? Could you not go back to everyone during this Christmas break, right? You sold 44 homes. Could you not send an email out to all of them or text and say, hey, listen, yeah, you can get into that, but like, I'm looking to grow my business because, right, make it very apparent. Is that what you're saying? Like, make it very clear of why I'm sending this survey. I want to better improve myself to be better for all of the referral clients that you're going to send me in 2024, right? They can do the same thing.
Absolutely. 100%. Get feedback. The top ones who give you good feedback, or you ask for a Google review in response. Of course, they're going to, the same skills that we use coaching or leaders use with their teams, we use with our clients. It's all,
don't be generic, right? But don't get a generic. You dig into me. Like, what seriously, like, Kathleen, what could I have done better for you? Like, I know that it wasn't perfect. It was not all rosies all across. Like, what could I have done better so I can improve myself?
Absolutely. And lean into the accountability. Like, I think as leaders too, like, we need data, because sometimes we think things are going well, and the data, like, we had a big team leader on stage at Summit. It was so cute because every single like high, he wouldn't like that I called it cute, but we'll take that part back. But any really high level listing agent is always like, I close all the deals. I'm like, okay, let's go and track. Like, over 15 years, it's always the same. And he's up there. He's like, I told them I closed every single listing. You know what, guys? I don't. Like, I was absolutely shocked. So it was really cute, like, not cute. It was really interesting just to see that awareness, because I think, like, how many agents actually have a documented client journey? And then on top of it, you have a system or a tool at every step of that client journey. And then you're tracking it so that you're like, oh, whoa, step 2, like, I'm losing a significant amount of my business. Like, the percentage of agents who actually do that are really low, but it allows you to elevate your business so quickly. And this is the market to really do it in, because we need to be Sherpas with buyers right now. They're looking for our guidance for sure.
There you go. So good tie-in then, right? So tools that agents and team leaders can elevate. Like, what are your thoughts now? Because it's a big hot topic in the last 12 months, 24 months, is the AI incorporation, right, into our space.
Sure.
What are your kind of thoughts on that? Or is there any other tools that can kind of help agents that they can use, or team leaders outside, or I guess really just get into AI?
Yeah, I mean, when it looks at AI, like in the team space, we're finding it more being in operations and marketing. I mean, I think if anyone's not doing that, creating your avatars and things that just took us time to think about the language, AI can help a lot. When it comes to CRM and data, we're still doing a lot of testing. We're working with some different platforms to do some testing on having AI come into the actual CRMs to work somewhat like a lead coordinator, a bit like ops of monitoring, like
Mm-hmm.
what's going well, which recordings were really good, which were really poor, like bring it to our attention, who's not contacting their leads. Even if you guys miss the data, we're watching it. That's coming down the line. I think it's going to be really fascinating. And I think some people are hearing it and going, well, we have that, but you still have to look for it. This is going to look for it and bring it to us within the CRM, and prompt the agents, which I think will be really important. But we still need a lot of the basic, like we find a night and day when it comes to tension built onboarding. When I say tension built, like in Toronto, it takes us 5 to 7 years to get the data we need, like 30 leads, 30 face-to-face appointments, 30 closed deals. Like the average agent's doing 2 or 4 deals a year, right? In
Yeah.
our real estate board, which is nuts. How do you survive? But what we do with onboarding is say, like, we need this data. So within the first 6 weeks, we'll get 80% of the equivalent data. And within the first 6 months, 20% of the rest. How do we do that? We take all the top most important steps, systems, presentations, scripts, tools that we know if we armed an agent with this, a sales agent, they could get up to like 90, 98% capacity in their role, because it's kind of like Henry Ford, right? They're just doing this one station if they're on a team. And doing that is like a night and day performance indicator. Like 50% or more of people won't even get through that. But when they come out of it, they have like this basic encyclopedia of real estate that's proven, tried, tested, and true, which is super important. So I think if you're a solo agent or a team watching this and you're going, hey, like maybe I haven't documented that client journey, or I don't have tools for each step, or I'm not tracking it, just doing that is going to allow you to get so much more organized, build out your CRM. It's going to get you light years ahead in your capacity of how much business you can do. Like, I don't think you can compete with the synergy of teams or individuals who have that as a solopreneur or a team who just isn't set up with it.
Love that. So I think that's the biggest thing as we kind of near the end is you've mentioned so many times about understanding the data. There's so much, I think, like you just said, like the AI, you've got to know, like leaders, you've got to know your ROI. You've got to know that process. You've got to get feedback. I think that was some of the biggest takeaways I've taken so far is there's probably so many companies, so many brokers, so many leaders out there that think they're running an operational, you know, Model T that is just rocking and rolling. But again, when you dig in, someone like yourself digs into those back end books, you realize that there is always room for improvement. And that's where I think that was the cool
Yeah.
tie in with AI. It's like you can use it, but you've got to still use it too. AI is not there yet where it's just going to run your whole business.
No, it should allow you to have more time for relationship building. I remember during COVID, and there was a coach, and like, all you need to do is relationships. I'm like, I build systems so we have way more time to build
Yeah.
relationships, right? Systems aren't the enemy, sorry, of relationships. Quite the opposite. But and I want to make sure I say, I think sometimes people hear this in coaches, and I run my own business. I model my business growth. I have a team of coaches, all that great stuff. But we're not sitting there in our glass towers, right? Like even myself with the economy turn, I'm like, wow, we used to track way more. There's some pieces we let slide. Guess what? Like I'm driving my ops crazy, being like, we need this now and this and this and this. It's like, even when you're super organized with data, you become fascinated and you become curious and you want even more of it. So I don't want people to hear and be like, oh, that's easy. It's like, you got to get in the game, and then
Yeah.
it gets better and better with the data. It allows you to save so much time and energy. But I feel every business right now, whether they admit it or not, is kind of going, okay, like we need to be in the numbers more right now than we are.
I got that from not from you. I got it from Shark Tank like 10 years ago. I remember like Mark Cuban was like, so what is your, or, he spatted out all these numbers and the guy was like, I actually don't know my cost to acquire a customer. I actually don't know. He's like, it's your
Yeah.
business. How do you not know these numbers? And it was like 10, 12 years ago. I was like, man, there's a lot of numbers that I don't know. I don't know my marketing budget. I actually don't know specifically where my marketing spend's going. I don't know the ROI on that. I don't know the ROI on the mailers. Like it was amazing, but that you got to know it and you got to be in it. Um,
Agreed.
but that kind of spins me to it then. So, right. So you came from investor, real estate, now one of the top coaches in the world. So what do you feel in your perspective, where we're at now? I know obviously you're in Canada, but the future of real estate? And then is there any other emerging opportunities maybe in our space that you feel that we can be, agents, team leaders, broker owners, that we can start preparing ourselves for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think I've already kind of highlighted. I
Yeah.
do believe and hope all at once that the future of real estate is this shift into more collaborative leadership. I think sometimes we try to isolate, business from personal, and that isolation doesn't exist. This is a lifestyle business, and how you do one thing's how you do everything. So, if we're out there with consumers and we're aggressive or manipulative or using, tactics that are just undesirable, that seeps into our home life, our family life, our community life. So I'm about holistic, high performance. So to me, it's very important that how we do business powers people up in a way that's good for mind, body, soul kind of thing, and their families and their communities. That's really important to me. So I hope that shift continues, and I see it. I see that we're ready for a change, and I mean, there's been so much in the last couple of weeks, of big announcements and changes in real estate. And I think it's obvious that things are shifting and for the better. I hope that we'll hear more voices who have the results. I'm a big believer of principle over popularity. And I think the industry would do well to shift a little bit more into principle and results instead of just money and popularity. And I hope that in the next couple of years will be coming. Aside from that, I think AI is way further ahead than at least I thought it was. I think it's going to blow our minds. We had some speakers come and present for the first time in Canada, anything of that level. And I really think it's kind of like when realtor.com or Zillow, and you started to realize the people who understand how to segment this business, whether you like it or not, they have the data and they have the power, and they understand what a lead's worth if you convert 80% higher. They understand all these things, and that's coming. And the people with the money to invest in the AI is definitely going to increase their conversion. It's going to get them ahead. It's going to get them more connected to consumers earlier in that digital marketing. So I think it'll divide even more the teams and the solopreneurs and make it even harder as a solopreneur to keep up unless you're like really entrenched in your community. So I'd say lean in, look at it, understand, put some money aside in your future budgets to make sure you're not behind in that, because you're losing market share, going forward. And that can be a scary thing for people.
But you mentioned too, the incorporation of AI doesn't just help clean up your business, accelerate your business, but it also allows you to be a better person at home. I'm glad you said that. That's one thing we always focus on. It's like who you are at home is who you become in your business. You said it. I preach it as well. AI allows you to be more present at home and more present in your business. So I love the fact that you stress so much on not being so much go back to the basics, but focus on those principles. And you mentioned it a little bit. I don't even want to get into it, but everyone's seen it all over the news, the big NAR lawsuit and all those things. There are so many agents and team leaders and brokers that are fearful of this like massive shift. And it's like, I look at it as an amazing opportunity because it's people that are doubting an industry that we've loved and you love, and you just obviously are here to support so many people in this space. But it's our opportunity now to show every single person that read that article our true net worth, right? Get back to those basics, get back to those core basics and principles to show the consumers, the buyers and sellers, why we are so needed in this market, right? So these are the times where you dive into lectures from you and dive into your training and all of your coaching to become a better agent. Because that's why I love when you shared all those certificates and all the training and the time that you invested. I think this is the time for every agent and team leader to start reinvesting, getting coaching, get someone like you that have so much years of experience, and get timing, guys, get it back to the basics and start showing the local community why we are so needed. That's what
Absolutely.
I think, like, that was the whole shift. And I'm glad that you kind of tied that in, because that's like, I've been like just chilling for so many, days since that lawsuit came. I'm like, guys, this is our time. This is our time to show Zillow and show all these other AI companies who said that they were going to evaluate our home. It's like, no, we are not going anywhere. So become better at what we do. And I think a big part of that, why I think people realize, or people don't realize that they don't need coaching. I'm always curious to see like all of your clients and things like that think like, oh, I've got a good thing going on. How many people
We
are probably
actually
hesitant?
had one of our Yeah, we had one of our clients do their keynote about that. And she honestly said she's been number one in her area for like 10 years. And she's like, you know what? I came to this summit 3 years ago and I was like, I don't need coaching. I'm number one in my area. And she's like, guess what? I did. And she was like so vulnerable and lovely, right? So it's interesting. I mean, I've always needed coaching personally. So I don't know.
But it's not even that, right? Being number one's great, but what she may have found out, I'm not putting words in that agent's mouth, but maybe there wasn't, because when I became the number one agent in Savannah years ago, I had zero quality of life, right? So you think that you're succeeding in one aspect of your life and the business is great, but then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, Kathleen just told me you're right. My principles are so far off because I'm giving all this to maybe my clients, but I'm failing at home. So it's sometimes funny when people think, well, that's great. You're the number one agent, but are you number one mom and number one dad, number one husband, whatever the case is. And I love that about what you're stressing about is bringing it all together. That means a lot to me because that is the biggest part of what a lot of agents I think miss. And they watch all these TV shows and it's all about the millions of dollars. And it's like, you've got to make sure your focus is right.
Absolutely. You want to hustle
Awesome.
yourself out of your whole lifetime, right?
What's that?
You don't want to hustle yourself out of your whole
No,
life.
you don't. Absolutely not. So there's always something, guys, that you can always be improving. So Kathleen, with that said, where can anyone listening, where can they find you on social? When's the next event you mentioned with Magic Johnson, coaching, just anything like that to kind of leave all the listeners with?
Absolutely. So the next big keynote that I'll be at is in Ottawa, actually, which is the nation's capital in Canada. It's kind of cold, but beautiful. You can skate on the canal with Magic Johnson. There'll be a whole bunch of A-list, just amazing in industry and out of industry speakers in March. And that's the ARIA Reality Conference. But if you want to connect with us, you can go to KathleenBlackCoaching.com or KathleenBlack.com is my personal. And we're all over all the social media. So we'd love for you to follow me. My personal is just Kathleen Black _ on Instagram. And I'd love to stay connected with all of you.
It's awesome. Kathleen, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your story and more importantly, your commitment to our industry. I love that. I love anyone that's committed to our business, that has faith in our industry, that continually becomes a resource and an asset to all of us leaders, brokers, and agents out there. So thank you for all that you do. Guys, I hope you found tremendous value in what Kathleen just shared with us. And definitely look out on her social accounts, look into her next venues, go visit her, go talk to her. And Kathleen, thank you again. I really appreciate you being on.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fantastic. And thank you for the work you do here and sharing with our industry. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kathleen. See you guys.
Oh. Yeah. So you can stop.
Oh.